Okay, I think we're going live here. It's been a little over a year since I did anything like this, and really this is only like the second one of these I think that I've ever done where it's just like my face as opposed to something more like perhaps this, which I think you can see if I switch. Oh no, actually no, you can't. I think I have to do this. Let me see. No, is that? There it is. Working in the software, and this is a song that I'm currently working on, and I haven't gotten too far on it, as maybe you can tell if you have any idea how these things work. Oh, you know what? Let me, there's a button here I need to press. There we go. That gives me a little. I can hear in my headphones my own voice. Otherwise, it sounds so muffled. It's a little disorienting. But as is often the case, I suppose, and as I've talked about in other videos, I don't really have like a structure for this or a script or neither do I even know like where I'm going to go with it. But I just felt I would like to try and do another video, and you know, as melodramatic as it may sound, I really have a deep desire to, you know, possibly share something that would, you know, help someone else or inspire someone else maybe. You know how these things are. It's like almost anything you put on the internet now just seems like, you know, fray for vultures or something, unfortunately. And I'm sure I've been guilty of it. What I'm talking about is just like criticism, right? It's like, if you're afraid of criticism, stay off the internet, because it just seems to be the nature of the beast here where, you know, and like I said, I think I've been guilty of it too, probably, in terms of criticizing something I've seen or something. And I don't know, not that there's even necessarily anything wrong with it inherently, I suppose, but it can get pretty vicious and ugly. And I suppose to me, that's when it's gone beyond the realm of serving any real purpose, probably, or something. But in any case, I've been fairly lucky actually with my channel. I mean, in part, I'm sure because I haven't had that many views, but I can only honestly remember there was one person who was really negative and left some really negative comment, and I can't remember exactly how I replied. I think I replied civilly, but I honestly don't remember. It's been a while. But they eventually removed their comments, so themselves. I didn't remove them, they did. So, at least I think so. Pretty sure. Anyhow, you know. So this is a song that I've been working on, and basically what I have here, if you have any familiarity, if you've watched maybe some of my other videos, or you have familiarity with digital audio workstations, which is what this is, this software. It's basically recording software for, you know, any audio you would record. This is a, you know, song. It's mostly for song making, I would say, but you can use it for anything. You can use it for voiceover. There's even a video section, which I never used, where you can like sync sound with video and stuff. But I use it for song recording and writing. And this track right here that says Addictive Drums is the drums. And I have 2 guitar tracks. Now, I don't know if I've mentioned this in other videos, but recently I've been doing my guitar tracks. It's kind of the easy way out, I'll admit. And maybe it doesn't sound quite as good as what I've done. Basically, is this is just one take, even though there's 2 tracks here. And I recorded it on with this Amplitude 5, which is like amp simulation software. Also does effects, here, I'll show you. It does effects pedals, it does rack mounted gear. But this is on this particular track, which is the guitar left. It has, this is a simulation, obviously, if you're familiar with Marshall amplifiers, of a Marshall amplifier. Here's the signal chain, that is the whole signal chain. I don't know what else I have. Oh, I have an overdrive pedal in there, so it's also simulating, although it looks like it's off, so. But, yeah, so anyway, I was simulating the Marshall amp with that, just that pedal, which is off, so I don't know. I even have that in there, honestly. But then here it's also got the cabinet. You can choose which cabinet you want to use. It's cabinet emulation and microphone emulation. You can move these microphones around. You can change the speakers. It's pretty impressive how in-depth it goes. But anyway, so what I was trying to say is it's one take, but then here's the other channel. This is guitar right, and I don't even know what I used here. Oh, okay. So I used the orange head simulation on this one for a slightly different sound, right? So, and it's got the orange cabinet. It's also got this, which again isn't on, that overdrive pedal. But so what it's done in and of that is I've got two different sounds basically. Even though it's the exact same performance, you can kind of tell just by looking at these waveforms. They're identical. You can see that, you know, they're literally identical, the waveforms. You can tell just by looking at them. So it's the exact same performance on two different tracks, but it's running through different amp head emulations. This one's got a Marshall and this one's got an orange. The other thing I did, and the reason that you do that is to get some separation between, like this one, the L is panned hard left, the R is panned hard right. And so what's happening there is you want to get some differentiation between the two takes so that it has more of a stereo effect. And the one other thing I did here that I may have mentioned before in a video is if I zoom this out, we're at 1/64th note resolution, but if I go to like 1/28th note, which is right there, 1/28th note, can you see how this one starts a little behind this one? Now what that is I just moved it. It's snapping to the grid when you move this thing around. Watch, I'll move it back. Bam! Now it's lined right up with this one. But I moved it 1/128th note over, and that also gives it some separation because they're not hitting at exactly the same time when you hear them. They're not, you know, that's the one right there where this line is. That's the one of the bar, and this one is, you know, more or less starting right on the bar, but this one isn't. And when it's that high of a note resolution, 128th note, which I don't know if it's even humanly possible to play 128th note. It might be, but I mean that's so fast. It's like a microsecond of time. So, but just even that much of a difference is going to give the sound when you're hearing it more separation. Now, for the longest time, I would play the part twice so that I had two different performances in the right and the left speaker, headphone, however you want to think of it. But I stopped doing it just for time because it's quicker to do it this way. And yes, it sounds, I don't know that it sounds quite as good as if you had two different performances because there's always nuances, you know, in different performances that you just don't get. Even with this, you know, amount of, you know, differentiation, but the different heads and cabinets and the moving the one performance just slightly behind the other one. But anyway, that's what I did here, and I don't know. I had this open because I was working on it, and I thought it might be interesting. Talk a little bit about that. Another thing that's important. I don't know how much I've talked about this before, but like in this drum performance, if I spread this out a little bit, a lot of these individual little like boxes that you see here, like there's one, you know, there, as you can see, they have a name at the top of them. They're taken from, they're MIDI information, but they're from an actual performance that somebody did. And they're in this software, which is the drum software, and they're in here and got all these different packages, I suppose you could call them, of different beats, and you can pick them here, pick a beat here, and then there's, like in this case, there's all these different variations on that beat, and you can just drag and drop these right into the plane here. I'll show you. Get to an open spot. So like, say I wanted to use, I don't know, whatever, this one here. So I click on it, and then I can just drag up here and drop it, and there it is. Now it's in the song. And what that is it's MIDI information that's going to then play. I'll show you here. It's going to play the drum set that you have selected here. In this case, I have this United Pop set. I've got several different ones though. Like I've got, let's see, what else is in here? Vintage Dry. This is kind of like a soft rock kit. There's United Pop again. Anyway, there's a bunch of different ones in here, but there's the snare. I don't think you can hear any of this actually. I don't have the DAW linked to the OBS right now, so that's kind of a bummer. But you can visually see, for instance, what's happening. If I then play this, you'll see this drum kit become active. Watch. See the hi-hat moving right? Oh, that's all this is hi-hat. Hold on, let me get a different one. It's a bad example. Just gonna delete that one. I didn't want hi-hat on. Let's try this one. This, I think, is the full kit. Now you'll see it playing the kit here. Watch. See, there's the bass drum, snare, and the hi-hat. You can see them kind of light up there. And you could hear them if I had this set up right, but I forgot to do that. I apologize. But anyway, what was I originally going to say about this? One of the challenges I find in recording and mixing these things, like I often write some of my own beats, but in this case, it looks like I used all beats from the software. But what happens is, like, depending on which ones you use, you'll often get volume variations. And so, like, the song will be going along, and then it'll change. Like, see, here's one beat, this beat here, and then here's a different one over here. And sometimes in the transition between those two, there'll be a big volume difference, whether it's one will be a lot louder or a lot quieter. It's just the nature of the software and how it is right now. I mean, I think it'd be kind of unrealistic to think of, you know, there's hundreds, if not thousands, I think, of beats in there that were played by a live drummer that were then turned into MIDI information, which is what this is. And it would be unrealistic, I think, that it probably wouldn't even be wanted for everything to be like the same volume, because, you know, there's dynamics to different parts and things. So, but there are ways of adjusting that. And let me see. One way to do that is through this piano roll here. If I highlight this, you can see these are the individual notes, and they fall like this is the bass drum. This is the snare drum. Being that you can't hear it, it's kind of a bummer, but and these are the individual note triggers, these, and then this down here is the velocity or the volume of the individual notes. So like if I select this note, if I just click on it, see how it got darker, and I pull this up, this slider here is the velocity or the volume of that individual note. So I can then drag this up or down to change the volume of it. And what usually I do is, if it's a whole part like this, I click here, it highlights all the notes in that part, and then you can move them all together just by dragging this up and down. Because they're all highlighted, so you can make all the notes in that particular section louder or softer. Or you can select individual notes, like just the snare drum in that section. I can show you how to do that, but I don't know honestly how you know, involved I want to get here, I guess, this stuff. But so that's, you know, this is stuff I may have even touched on before, but I don't know. I thought I'd mention it here. Let's see. I think I will go back to the current resolution. Why is that? Please check the video resolution. You know, I don't even know where that is. The video resolution on what? On the OBS? Let me see. General. Video. Oh yeah, I see that here. See, the bass is different from the output. Oh well. That's why my videos have been so low resolution. I watch the streams after I do them, and I'm like, oh boy, that's pretty bad, but oh well. Something I talked about in my last video, and I just rewatched that. I hadn't seen it in quite a while, but I was talking about lyric writing. Someone had asked me about it, and so I did a video specifically on that. And my initial intention here was really probably to do something more along the lines of talking about that. But to be honest, this is one of these cases where like I had the motivation or the inspiration to talk about it, but I started thinking about, okay, what am I going to talk about? And it's kind of ironic in a way, because it's what I was talking about to an extent in my previous video, where I was saying that a lot of my process is just to write, and not to be one who like waits for inspiration, or even necessarily has much of a concept about what I'm going to write about. But I just take the approach of just doing, and kind of the Nike approach, the just do it, the old Nike slogan. But I find in this case, honestly, I think it's, to be perfectly honest, I think it's in part because of other pressures, other things that are going on in my life, maybe, that are causing me some anxiety or something. And yeah, I was struggling a little with. I definitely had like I felt strongly that I wanted to say something, but I wasn't sure what it was. See, this is another part of my process that maybe I didn't talk about last time, was in that sometimes, in the case of my writing, I'll actually do a good deal of thinking before I start writing. Now, I don't know. I guess in a sense, that's kind of like making an outline. I don't actually write anything down, but I'll often just think about, okay, like, what do I want to say here? What story am I telling? Or in the case of something like this, what do I want to talk about? Where do I want to go? Do I want it to be just, very basically, what do I want to talk about? And in the case of this, I did some of that, which really was maybe 10 minutes of thinking. It wasn't a whole lot. It was just like, okay, well, what am I going to say? And I think I tried a few things out. Like I said, a few things just out loud that I might want to talk about. But I don't know. I was having a hard time, for whatever reason, of coming up with anything that seemed I don't know, perhaps of any real interest or value, something like that. So struggling a bit here. I took some time off, semi-intentionally, semi-not perhaps. It wasn't like I absolutely had to. I could have been doing something, at least writing lyrics or something, but because of other events in my life, I took about roughly 3 weeks, a month, I think. I wasn't really doing any recording or playing instruments or writing lyrics or anything really. And maybe that's part of it too. I've noticed with a lot of people who, I don't know, musicians maybe in particular, they say like if they even miss a day of playing, they notice it when they go back. Oh wow, which seems a little extreme to me, honestly, but hey, but maybe that is part of it. Maybe just 3 weeks off was enough that I've I don't know, my chops are a little rusty or something, even just in talking about these sorts of things. But I'm getting back into it. I think I finished mixing a song, and I played a couple lead guitar parts on it. It was basically very close to finished. It was something that I had been working on before I took the break. And I have two other things that are like that. The one was the one I just showed you, and then I have another one that's pretty much just a drum beat. So I have a couple things that are various stages of completion that I'm working on. I finished the one, and some of what I was doing before I stopped was I'd actually gotten like, I I don't know how many, 4 or 5 albums worth of material, and I hadn't done any album covers or even burned CDs. They were all just in the computer. So I'm old school in a sense. I still like to burn CDs. You know, I'm from back in the days of vinyl originally, and cassette tapes, so even 8-track tapes. So yeah. Anyway, I guess I'm kind of old school in that sense. So I did that. I got some, made some album covers and burned CDs and put those together. And I wanted to do that before I went on any further with any more writing, because it was getting like backlogged, and I like to have that sense of the finished product, even though it was, like I said, it was in the computer. I didn't, you know. I was just reading an article where I think it was Gene Simmons actually was talking about, you know, how album artwork used when it was back, you know, the days of vinyl. I can't get the size right here, but you know, you had this, you know, everybody's seen it. I mean, I guess there's a resurgence of it even now, but I've thought this much myself over the years, since it kind of went out of favor for CDs, and then, you know, digital downloads and stuff and streaming, and how much more, I suppose, impactful like album art used to be. It was a pretty big deal, you know, at least to me, and I think to a lot of people. It was like, oh wow. And I think Gene Simmons even mentioned in this article that how sometimes you bought the album just for the album artwork, and that was a really strange thing when I was younger, because it got to the point where I could tell if I was going to like an album just by what the album cover looked like. And I remember buying several albums. Maybe I'd never even heard the band, just by, oh, okay, I'm going to like this. I look at the album cover, and it wasn't like I remember like at one point, heavy metal albums covers to an extent all kind of looked the same. You know what I mean? They weren't identical, but I mean, you knew the genre or whatever just by seeing the album cover. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I have a lot of great metal album covers, but what I'm talking about is like kind of the opposite of that. It just makes it more interesting to me in a way. Like I remember seeing like album covers and just that were so diverse, and just thinking, and somehow even so, knowing, oh yeah, I'm gonna like that. And maybe it was just I don't know. I honestly don't know how to quantify that or whatever. But I mean, things as diverse as like Talking Heads' "Remain in Light," that album cover. If you've ever seen that, you can look it up. And maybe like a Split Enz album cover. And maybe it was just that they were. Perhaps it was something like they didn't look mainstream or something. You know, mainstream. I don't know. I just remember like being fascinated by the fact that getting the album home and playing it and going, yep, I knew I was going to like this. Yeah. So, yeah. And now, again, like Gene Simmons mentioned, you know, it seems like the most you get usually is like, you know, some tiny little thumbnail on a streaming service or something of the album cover. And it's just not the same, you know? And I guess that dates me and maybe even makes me an old man, but what can you do about the passage of time, I guess, you know? I try to like, I'm not sure how hard I try, but I do try to not be, you know, the stodgy old man that I hated basically when I was a kid. You know, that guy is just old, you know, he doesn't get it, you know. And, you know, I don't know, to me, I can see the advantages and I guess the disadvantages of the current place we're in terms of music. I don't know. You know, I'm not going to say I'm an expert on these things, but I've heard I guess, both ends of the spectrum in terms of like how it benefits or doesn't benefit the artist. Like these streaming services and stuff don't seem to generally, from what I've seen, like they really, the artists aren't getting much of a return, it seems like, for the amounts, the numbers of plays and things, which, you know, it benefits the consumer, I guess, right? Which I'm a consumer of music too, but it's like, I don't know. Honestly, as long as I can remember, there's been issues with um, the music business. So I don't want to go into a real negative Ned rant about it, but yeah, when I was a teenager, I heard a lot of negative stuff. I mean, my father was a nightclub musician for 30 years, and he eventually quit just because he couldn't make enough money doing it. And even after 30 years, he told me after, at the end of his 30 years, he was still making as much as when he started. So there was that aspect. There were some other aspects too. Even I knew a famous musician from Big Brother and the Holding Company, James Gurley, who was a guitarist in that band, and that was Janis Joplin's band. And he had a lot of very negative things to say about the music business, and it's just I don't know. Maybe it's part of why I never really got involved with it. I don't in terms of like from a financial perspective. I mean I played in clubs a little bit. I made a little bit of money doing that, but that's basically it in terms of making any money from music. It's just something I've done more or less, I guess, as a hobby. Although I've spent a lot of time and money in this hobby. But anyway, like I said, I don't want to go on some real negative rant about it, I guess. Maybe I already have to an extent. More hoping to just, I don't know, have something positive to say here, and hopefully encouraging or something. I don't even know if I'll publish this, or I have a lot of stuff on my channel that is I've just that remains private, that I never actually like shared with the public, just because. Well, honestly, some of it's kind of just like me playing video games and stuff. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. I noticed recently that, in fact, just today, I was going back over some lyrics that I'd written. This would have been, roughly 3 weeks ago, a month ago, and I was, to be perfectly honest, I haven't seen him in about that much time. He's just been sitting in the computer, and so I was a little bit surprised, I suppose, at how dark they were. Not that I should necessarily be surprised, because I've written a lot of dark stuff in the past, and I've been a big fan of like horror fiction, throughout my life. So I guess I shouldn't be that surprised necessarily, but it's still, for some reason, I was a little surprised at the imagery, just how dark it was, and kind of, honestly, I guess maybe a little depressing. And I had to stop and think, well, something that, like in my last video I mentioned, I don't do too often, but I did here. I thought, is this a direction I really want to go? I mean, in terms of this was stuff that I hadn't put in a song yet, because that's often how I write. I'll write X number of pages of lyrics, and then I'll just start from where I started. I'll just start like using those lyrics like in sequence for songs. So this was like the tail end of something I'd written that I hadn't used any songs yet, and I'm thinking, as I'm reading this, is this really where I want to go? The direction I want to go? Because I don't know. It's a tough question, because it's not like I think that. Maybe I'm not even, to be perfectly honest, I'm not entirely sure what I think of it. Is it like, what is the value, if there is any, to that sort of writing? And I think there can be a value to it. As in any kind of art, sometimes I don't know. Maybe it's important to show, things that aren't necessarily so bright and happy or something all the time. I'm not even exactly sure why, maybe, but I struggle with that. I struggle with that idea because I feel like I want to, you know, be positive and I suppose even upbeat to some extent, but uh, I don't know. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I'm having like a little crisis of, I don't know, the value, I suppose, perhaps even the morality or something of stuff that's, kind of dark, I guess I would say, So I don't know. I haven't really come to a conclusion, I suppose, on that, and so it's kind of saying where I'm at with it, I guess. I thought of even maybe sharing some of it here, but I don't know. I don't know that I want to really necessarily. Maybe I will at another time or something, but um, I don't know. There's a lot of what I would consider somewhat deep kind of philosophizing, I suppose, that I do about these kinds of things, and um, there seems, as with a lot of things, maybe almost everything, there's different schools of thought as to the value or lack of value, I suppose, of I don't know, certain kinds of writing or something. It's like I've heard views that it's kind of hard to explain, but views that are like the idea of like if you're expressing something dark, you're really just kind of like perpetuating or enhancing the negative aspects of it. Even if it's like something you're feeling or thinking or have experienced, it's like it's hard to explain. I don't even know that I'm doing a good job of explaining it, but it's that basic idea that it's yeah, you're somehow like making it worse, put simply, right? That's one school of thought, and then the other school of thought would be, I suppose, or another school of thought would be that that there's value in being able to express these things, like even like, I don't know, feelings of pain or doubt or some unpleasant situation, I suppose, that there's like it's therapeutic or something to be able to express it in words or art in some ways, right? And I guess I kind of find myself in the middle somewhere of those two ideas, which is kind of unpleasant, honestly, to be there, because it's like, feel kind of like caught between these. I find that a lot in life, and just I don't know, in a lot of things that maybe I shouldn't even talk about here, but it's like often things seem like they're presented in kind of a black and white, right or wrong sort of uh, way, and I don't know. I guess my experience is that there's a lot more gray area or something to a lot of things. I'm not saying nothing is, that there is no right or wrong. Although that was ironically, I shouldn't laugh maybe because I know it's a serious concept, but it was something when I was brainstorming or thinking about what I might want to talk about here. That was one thing that came to mind because it's something I've thought about a lot, and it's the idea of the somewhat, at least for me, challenging idea of like, in art, is there really any right or wrong? And like it's hard. It's a hard concept. You would think, I suppose, that there has to be, right? Because every right and wrong permeates all of life, really. The morality and whatnot. But it's interesting in art because it's like it's almost like an area. It seems like an area where there almost like there maybe isn't any right or wrong. Although I don't know. Having said that, that was my initial thought, and it's often my initial thought when I think about this particular subject. But Then coming on the heels of that, I start to think, well, no, there probably are things that you just shouldn't do that would be too offensive or just too, I don't know, off color, whatever you want to call it, wrong, perhaps, even within the context of art. Um, I, I guess, where it's challenging for me is it's like, well, how does art, how would it be possible for art to hurt someone, right? But then I think about, well, especially like in the case of children or something, if they, saw or heard something that was, uh, you know, something they couldn't understand, perhaps, or just, I don't know, it's a tough one for me because I feel like, I don't know. I don't know what I think about it. It's just challenging. I guess often when I think of art, I think that that the limits are pretty broad as to what is acceptable or something, because just the nature of what it is or something, you know. But I think that my ultimate conclusion, I suppose, is that even in art, there has to be some kind of sense of morality or something. It can't just be, I don't know, without any limits or something. It's a tough one, though. I admit it's a challenging subject. Uh, I don't know. So I almost feel a little uncomfortable talking about it because it's something that's challenging for me when I think about it. But I suppose I'll say one other thing about it, and it's like, well, what is the limit of what art is, right? When does it become something other than art? Because I guess there's a boundary there too, I mean, and it would probably depend on somebody's opinion to some extent, but some people say, well, that's not art, that's something else, and I don't know. Anyway, I think this is, to an extent, this is me struggling to come up with something to talk about here. I apologize if I don't know. These are things that some of these things are things that I think about, and I find it hard to have like a concrete answer about it or something. But yeah, anyhow, where are we here? Oh, I'm over 30 minutes already. Jeez, time flies. Anyway, I'll think about posting this. I don't know how good it is. Maybe I'll watch it and come to a conclusion later. But thanks for listening in case I do post this. And I hope there was something enjoyable here or interesting. And I will see you next time.